We were sent to the eastern border near Eilat to protect for the worst case scenario of Iraqi militias coming from Jordan. Then Lebanon started. Since October 7th, Miluim is anywhere between 60 to 150 days a year. Huge effects on family, on kids, on work. It's very, very challenging for everyone. For my 4-year-old, vast majority of her life has been this war. It ties into my work. I work for Nefesh B'Nefesh, the internal capacity of an IT project manager, so I service the user base of the organization. But as an organization, what we do is we help Olim from North America come to Israel, and some other things like helping lone soldiers from all over the world, and doctors from all over the world, Zionist Education Initiative, and some others. That bridge from the U.S. to Israel, and me also growing up to American and Canadian parents in Israel. I've always lived on the doorstep between the two. It's interesting, I always keep in mind the costs and the benefits of living here, especially with the fact that I'm helping people who have chosen to leave the U.S. and Canada, prosperous, rich countries, and come to Israel where there are certainly a lot of challenges, but the meaning of living here as a Jew for a lot of people is worth it all. My grandfather was a pharmacist, and at the time, to get your license to practice in Israel was quite an ordeal. It still is. And so he made Aliyah. They came here, and for an entire year, he was working on getting that license so he could start practicing, so he could start working in Israel and making money. And that whole time, they were burning through their savings. One of the programs that Nefesh B'Nefesh has, it's called IMAP, International Medical Aliyah Program, where they help people prepare for getting their license ahead of Aliyah in accordance with Ministry of Health, all of the other organizations that require, so that when people come, they can get their license right away and start practicing, to prevent exactly the situation that prevented my grandparents from making Aliyah. I think to a large extent also that's a lot of the mindset in Israel, being that the main focus of, entrepreneurship and tech, people can sort of make it on their own, start something new, try and fail, and if things fail, that's all right. Every entrepreneur has at least 5 or 6 failed ventures, in their past that they're happy to tell people about what they learned from their failures. I'm also navigating that path as well. I have a stealth startup I can't get into too much detail about, but it's in the realm of RegTech it's in the very, very early stages of market discovery and making sure that there's a business model and it's technically viable. If all goes well and I have a few partners, hopefully that will get off the ground. And if not, then, that will be my first failed story. And I think also one of the reasons that Aliyah from the States and from Canada for a lot of people has become more of an option because of the growing economic power of Israel. It used to be purely 100% only Zionist ideals, and I think it's mostly still that. There's a lot to be said for Israel's growth and its standing in that world. Economically, technologically, I can see that for a lot of people it's become more of a serious option for those reasons.
Masterful Leaders for men building business, family, and self, hosted by Shimshon Meir Frankel.
Our guest today is Arye Green, an elite IT leadership executive, technical infrastructure architect, and systems strategist who specializes in translating complex organizational chaos into high-defense technological solutions. Managing high-stakes technology initiatives that directly safeguard operational infrastructure across Israel and American Jewry, Arye focuses on leveraging advanced automation and secure systems to streamline rigid regulatory frameworks. Over the last 2 years, his leadership has been tested under the most extreme conditions imaginable. Balance between high-level corporate execution and serving nearly 400 days of active duty military services since October 7th. Arye is an operator whose perspective on technological resilience has been forged in the highest stakes environments imaginable. He's here to show us how to build corporate systems that refuse to break under pressure, how to lead high-performance teams through macro-organizational crises, and how to maintain the ultimate level of integrated regulation while balancing global corporate execution with the calling of national service. Arye, welcome to Masterful Leaders.
Thank you very much. Beautiful introduction. You set a high bar. I'll do my best. Yeah, you've really touched upon a lot of things, everything that I was hoping to touch on.
So, Arye, you operate in a high-stakes IT landscape where a single infrastructure breakdown or compliance failure can freeze operations across international borders. Most technical leaders attempt to solve systemic complexity by simply layering on more software, which often just creates more technical debt and user friction. You advocate for translating human behavioral challenges into clean, automated architecture that respects compliance without choking operational velocity. When an executive is looking to leverage advanced technology and artificial intelligence to streamline heavy regulatory frameworks, what is the exact engineering blueprint they must follow to ensure that the software actively removes friction instead of adding a new layer of bureaucratic noise?
What I do in my position, the way I see it is I'm empowering the enablers, people who enable these regulatory processes to happen. In our case, it's to do with immigration. They help immigrants, new Olim, come to Israel from the United States and Canada. And it's always important to remember that they are the experts on their business. And we really need to listen to the experts on the business of the regulatory framework that we're working in. It happens to be that I have a few years of experience doing that work as well. I started at Nefesh B'Nefesh as an Aliyah advisor, so I have the capacity and the knowledge on that front, and then I managed a team, and then I moved into IT. So I know some of the business. Now, obviously, as regulations do, things change. Things change both on the regulatory level of the rules, the laws, and how they're implemented. It's always important to listen to the users on the one hand, but also take into account the structural, architectural considerations that the professionals bring to the table. You want to listen to the wish list of the business people, how they would like the system to work for them to be able to execute their job in the best way possible. And then together with the architects of the system, in this case it's our CRM, see what we can offer them that will both give them the best experience, make the most sense in terms of our data structure of our organization, because we're the experts on that, or rather they are the experts on that, our implementers, architectures, and be the most efficient for future thinking. If we ever want to be, more automatic and introduce agents and AI into the system, which we obviously do, the only way for that to work is for the data to be as clean as possible. And for that, you have to have the right data structure. You have to be smart about how you incorporate new data into the system, make sure that it always complies with the current data. You need to be constantly cleaning things up, have QA on your data, both new data that comes in and current data in the system. And all that stuff has to be maintained on a regular basis for you to be future ready for any AI layer that you put on top of that. Otherwise, you get what we call garbage in, garbage out. If your AI is running on a messy data set in your CRM, it's going to give you garbage, and you're going to blame the bot, or your users are going to blame the bot, when really it's the fact that your database isn't clean enough, and so it's giving them inaccurate data. If a user, let's say, a representative, is looking at the data and they have human knowledge of the people who they're the customers and the architecture of the system, they might be able to notice when something is off. But if an AI bot is just giving answers based on the rules it was given, it won't know that what it's saying is not making sense. It's going to hallucinate in that sense because that's the data it has and those are the rules it was given. It doesn't have that underlying understanding of the whole process. It doesn't have necessarily the experience that the human representative has. And so you really have to have your system as clean as possible. One of the main functions that I serve in the organization is to sort of interface between those two sides, the business side, the technical side, to make sure that everyone's needs are heard, and then to push forward with projects for them to both move forward and actually happen, in the time frame, in the budget that was given, as well as for it to comply with our needs for the system to be robust, to keep running. Like you said, a failure of the system can be a blocker for people actually, fulfilling their dream, completing their aliyah, and so we take it very, very seriously, and we try to minimize downtime to zero.
I'm always fascinated with, we'll just call it the machines, in terms of instilling it with human capacity. And it sounds like your job is to invest that time and work with the AI in order to match what it is that the new Olim and the new business owners that are coming to this country, they can move forward and grow and develop their businesses here in the land.
We all have a pretty intuitive idea of what we want our user experience to be and how it could be a lot better than it is. And AI seems to me, seemingly it's very easy to do that, right? It seems very possible. People give a prompt to a coding LLM, if it's Claude or Gemini or Codex from ChatGPT, and it seems to be created out of nowhere. The tricky part, and that's what I deal with a lot of the time, is making sure that it's robust on the back end, that it's GDPR compliant, that it's cyber security-wise it's safe, that it won't make a mess of our data, like I said before. Bringing that into reality and actually deploying that into production for our users to use and to have a really nice technological experience when they apply and go through this bureaucratic process is a lot more complex than just prompting one or two prompts to the AI to build the system that we've imagined in our heads. But it does certainly help a lot to have these tools, and we utilize them to the best of our ability. We expect to make a lot of progress in the next 12 months, let's say, for the experience to be much, much better than it has been on a technological level. That's one. And at the end of the day, what people really are frustrated with is, aside from all these tech issues that we're in charge of solving, is the human bureaucratic aspect. And that's something that we try to, as an organization, to do the best that we can to help guide people, to help advocate for them, so that if they're eligible for Aliyah, they get their approval from the necessary parties and have as little issues along the way as possible.
Since October 7th, you have logged nearly 400 days of active duty military service, while simultaneously steering critical technological initiatives that support Jewish community infrastructure. This level of extreme national service means that the traditional concept of work-life balance, it's completely irrelevant. Your leadership has been fundamentally tested on two fronts at the exact same time. When you're rotating between the high-intensity operational realities of military deployment and the macro growth demands of your technology firm, how do you protect your internal focus so that you can show up for your family and community as a grounded leader rather than an exhausted operator?
So depending on what type of service, every time we got called up was a little bit different. I usually tried to the best of my ability to continue to function on both of those fronts. So if there were critical functions that I was fulfilling in work, I tried to maintain those, or at the very least be available to those who are taking my place for the time being, to give them the basic knowledge they need in order to move that forward in my absence. And then for family, there's the limited amount that I can be there for my wife and for my kids. Lots of Zoom calls, things like that, which I know was important for them. But more than that, on the time that I'm off from the Army, when I'm home for a few days in the middle of the draft, to really be there for them and give them the time that they need, as much quality time as possible, and give my wife some time to rest. And it's been very, very difficult for her at the time that I'm out and drafted. She's like a single mom for months at a time. It's just very, very challenging to both be there for her emotionally when I'm not able to help, being far away, and then some of the time, depending on the type of service, again, some of the time we were completely disconnected. The first time we were called up on October 8th, when the first few weeks we were training, but once we went into Gaza, in Beit Hanun, we didn't have our phones, we didn't have internet, we had none of that. So it was complete radio silence. And in a sense, it was cleaner. It was clear that there's no in between. There was nobody to talk to. You were focusing on your mission, which I think because that was like a much higher intensity, that was necessary. I think it makes a lot of sense. And then when I was home, it was really just family. The other rounds, every time was a little bit different, but you often have some downtime while you're there. And then depending on the level of internet and other things, I worked while I was on reserve duty. And sometimes if it's close to home, I even might pop over and help with bathing the kids in the evening, and then back to a night shift and, in the Jeep patrolling. And there's a lot of juggling. It's transitioning overnight from here to there, time and time again. It's really just good practice for project management as well, because it's what you do all day is juggle different tasks that have different nature to them. And so transitioning from one to the other all the time, it helps a lot with resilience. It's really good practice, but it's difficult. It's a skill to learn that I think the last 3 years have really taught me a lot. How to be flexible, how to transition from one thing to the next very quickly. And I want to also say a good word to the team that is around me and can, in a whim, when I sometimes was gone from one day to the next, October 8th, February 28th, June of 2025, when I didn't have any notice and I didn't prepare anything in advance, I was just gone the next day, just like that they were able to swoop in and take over the core functions that really need to be done in my absence, and prioritize and know what can wait until I'm back and what needs to happen while I'm out. It's obviously a big cost for an organization to need to do this, but it does also support people's ability to be flexible and to take on other responsibilities. It helps everyone grow and have a capacity for that, which again, it's, growing from the challenges of today to a more resilient and capable individual, or individuals in this case that create a more capable organization that can deal with change, which in the environment that we're in is very much necessary for any organization to be successful.
Growing through the challenges.
Yeah, though I look at it like growing your muscles, right? You need to work your muscles. They have micro tears and it hurts and it's challenging. And then through repeating that time and time again, you grow back stronger. It's the same with family that grows and becomes more resilient, and it's the same with organizations at work. And on a personal level, with our skills and capabilities, I think that with all the challenges, and there are challenges, it does have its benefits as well. I will say, though, that the extent to which we were called up in the last 3 years, I did 400, some people did even more than me. I don't think it's sustainable in the long term, and there does need to be some kind of broad solution to lighten the load on the people who are called up time and time again, to call up people who haven't been called up. Leave politics aside, but there are some parts of the Israeli public that haven't been serving as much, some for ideological reasons, some just because they weren't called up, and the Army needs to do a better job of calling up people that haven't been called up at all and training them, because it is an investment. If someone hasn't been doing military service for 10, 15 years, getting them back into things is an investment, but I think the Army needs to do that. It's important.
You built your career from the ground up, moving directly from the front lines of customer support into high-level IT leadership and enterprise architecture. That trajectory requires a massive internal identity shift from reacting to immediate technical firestorms to proactively engineering long-term structural order under intense pressure. Having spent the last 2 years constantly operating on the absolute front lines of both national security and enterprise technology, what is your personal strategy for regulating your internal state, filtering out the macro noise, and maintaining the psychological grit required to keep human ingenuity at the center of fast-moving technical systems?
That's a great question. I've always been relatively calm when these sort of things happen, but I think that the best way for me to cope, and I've given this over also to some staff members when they were, under pressure, either by customers, frustrated customers who are going through a hard time in their process because it's a very stressful process, and also now, dealing with stakeholders either internally or externally. As we all know, in Israel, the level of customer support is typically not great, especially for those who are used to American support, right? To not take things personally. It's never personal to you. You are doing the best that you can. If someone is getting upset, it's about them. It's not about you. And in that moment when everything seems to be sort of going out of control, to take a step back, take a deep breath, remember that it's not about you. They're having a problem. You're there to support them. You remind them that you're there in a supporting role, whether it's supporting a customer directly, whether you're managing a team and you're supporting your team members, or whether you are in a role to manage a project that is of a supporting capacity to the organization on a technical level. You're there to serve. And if you're doing what you can in order to support that mission, then you're doing your best. And if people are frustrated with the process, it's legitimate. Processes can be very frustrating, difficult. And you're trying to do what you can to streamline things and resolve those issues and never ever take it personally. Remember also that these things are temporary. There are, peaks and troughs. Sometimes you're at the peak of a complexity of a project or complexity of a bureaucratic regulatory process that someone is in, or they got, denied, declined from whatever they were trying to do, or you have to tell a company that was trying to sell you a product that you're not interested. These are challenging things. Once you get through them, they're in the past, you've learned from them, you've grown from them, it'll be easier next time, and everything is always temporary. So just to remember those two things, I feel like got me through a lot of trouble, and it's not always easy to remember them, but to sort of say them to yourself again and again. And I mentioned this a little bit before, but also having a strong why can also be very, very fundamental to that. So remembering that you're there to serve a greater purpose. If it's in the Army, often, you're part of a huge, huge project and you're a very small cog in the machine. But if you understand the why, you're there to serve and protect your nation. If you're part of an organization that's helping Jews come and live in their homeland and fulfill their dream, then even if what you're dealing with on a daily basis is very highly technical and it doesn't seem so important, at the end of the day, it all comes together to support that greater mission, and it helps to remember that on a daily basis.
Arye, this has been an amazing mastermind in terms of going through transition mastermind.
Yeah.
And you seem to have a real master over it. And I think that a lot of people have really gained a lot from what you've shared with us today.
Thank you.
And I think also it's comforting to hear that you are in a position to help people who are immigrating to the land, and that you're making it much more smoother transition for them. And I thank you for that.
God willing. Yeah. Everyone has their own, their own process. And for some people it will be easier, for some people it will be harder. Everyone has their own story to tell. But at the end of the day, I believe everyone has their own process to go through and their own challenges to face. And if they remember what they're there for, why they're there, and they take everything in stride, nothing is insurmountable.
Thank you, Arye, for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
We certainly could not have done this episode of Masterful Leaders without you. This is Masterful Leaders. Win at work, thrive at home, lead your life.
On Masterful Leaders, we believe true success is built across every part of life, not just business. If this episode added value to you, subscribe, share it with someone you care about, and join us next time as we continue building the full package.